breaking right now. On April 2nd, 2026, at approximately 11:47 a.m. Eastern Time, President Donald Trump stood before cameras and said words that immediately erased $2 trillion from global markets. We are going to hit them extremely hard over the next 2 to 3 weeks. We are going to finish the job. 2 to 3 weeks, not months, not years. A defined timeline for expanded war against Iran. And within minutes, Brent crude oil surged 7% to $108.69 per barrel. U.S. crude hit $107.24. Tokyo Nikkei fell 2.4%. South Korea Kospi lost 4.5%. And in Israel, as if responding to the same script, 4 Iranian missile salvos struck within 1 hour. Cluster warheads, civilian casualties. 2 babies wounded in Bnei Brak. This is not speculation. This is April 2nd, 2026. And this video is the complete documented record of what actually happened. Welcome back. What happened between 11:47 a.m. and 4:00 p.m. on April 2nd, 2026, is the most important piece of information about this war escalation that has been systematically buried under general market reporting and diplomatic analysis. We are going through every verified Trump statement, every documented missile strike, every oil price movement, and every civilian casualty report, because the question of whether this war is entering its final destructive phase is not a market question. It is the central question of global economic survival and regional catastrophe. Drop a comment right now if you had not seen the full timeline of Trump 2 to 3 week announcement, the simultaneous Iranian cluster warhead attacks, and the exact market losses presented in one place. Because that coordination tells us everything about what comes next. Let's start with exactly what Trump said, because precision matters here and every word is documented. At 11:47 a.m. Eastern Time, President Trump addressed reporters. The context was Iran nuclear negotiations. The Geneva talks had collapsed. The 12-day ultimatum had expired. Military action was already underway, but the scope was about to change. Trump stated, "We are going to hit them extremely hard over the next 2 to 3 weeks. We are going to finish the job." The phrase "finish the job" referred to Iran nuclear program. The 12-day war in June 2025 had damaged facilities but not destroyed them. Trump was announcing phase 2, expanded strikes, extended timeline, definitive destruction. He added, "I think we are going to make a deal with Iran," but the sequencing was clear. First, the extremely hard hits, then the deal. The diplomacy would follow the destruction. The negotiation would occur from position of complete military dominance. The timeline was specific, 2 to 3 weeks, not the 48-hour cycles of previous announcements, not the 12-day operations of past conflicts. A sustained campaign, 3 weeks of extremely hard hits, the longest defined military operation of this war. Share this video right now because the gap between Trump announcement and market reaction was 4 minutes. By 11:51 a.m., oil futures were surging. By 12:15 p.m., global markets were in free fall. The financial world understood immediately what the political world was still processing. Now let's be precise about what happened to global oil markets, because accuracy is everything on this channel. And this price movement has genuine economic complexity that we will not hide from. At 11:47 a.m., Brent crude was trading at $101.50 per barrel. By 12:30 p.m., it hit $108.69, a 7% surge in 43 minutes, the fastest oil price increase since the 2022 Ukraine invasion. The cause was not supply disruption. No Iranian facilities had been newly struck. No Hormuz closure had occurred. The cause was anticipated disruption. The market was pricing 3 weeks of extremely hard hits. The market was pricing potential facility destruction. The market was pricing possible Iranian retaliation against Saudi, Emirati, or Iraqi oil infrastructure. U.S. crude West Texas Intermediate followed, $107.24 per barrel. The spread between Brent and WTI narrowed. Global benchmark convergence. Every oil importing nation faced immediate cost pressure. India, China, Japan, Germany, the United States itself. The gasoline futures market exploded. Summer driving season contracts hit $3.40 per gallon wholesale. Retail prices would follow within 48 hours. American consumers would see $4.50 per gallon at pumps by April 4th. European consumers would see $1.80 per liter. Inflation expectations rewired. Federal Reserve policy calculations destabilized. The economic ripple began immediately. Hit subscribe right now, because what I am about to tell you next is the part of this story that Wall Street desperately does not want assembled in one place. At 11:51 a.m., the Tokyo Stock Exchange was still open. Nikkei 225 index fell 2.4% in 23 minutes, in the fastest single-session decline since March 2020 pandemic crash. Export-heavy manufacturers led losses. Toyota, Sony, SoftBank, all dependent on stable oil prices, all facing margin compression. The South Korea Kospi lost 4.5%, the steepest decline in Asian markets. Samsung, Hyundai, SK Hynix. Technology and automotive sectors both exposed to oil-driven inflation, both facing demand destruction. European markets opened at 3 a.m. Eastern. The FTSE 100 fell 1.8%. The DAX fell 2.1%. The CAC 40 fell 1.9%. Energy import dependency made European markets particularly vulnerable. The euro weakened against the dollar. Safe haven flows began. U.S. futures pointed to 1.2% opening decline for S&P 500. The VIX volatility index surged 18%. Gold hit $3,100 per ounce. Bitcoin, often touted as inflation hedge, fell 3%. The flight to safety was traditional. Bonds, dollars, precious metals, not digital assets, not risk exposures. By 4 p.m. Eastern, global market capitalization had declined $2.3 trillion in 4 hours. On one announcement, one timeline, 2 to 3 weeks of extremely hard hits, drop a comment right now. When you see that one presidential statement erased $2 trillion in 4 hours, what does that mean to you about who actually controls global economic stability? I genuinely want to know. Now let's look at what Iran did as Trump spoke, because the military timing reveals coordination that should alarm every Israeli citizen. At 12:15 a.m. Israel time, 6:15 p.m. April 1st in New York, Iran began first missile salvo, 4 salvos total within 1 hour. The timing was not random. The timing was message. As Trump announced escalation, Iran demonstrated capability. As markets crashed, Iran demonstrated reach. The weaponry was significant. Cluster warheads, submunitions designed to disperse over wide areas, not precision strikes. Area denial, civilian terror. The technical escalation from unitary warheads to cluster munitions represented deliberate escalation in lethality. The targets were central Israel, Greater Tel Aviv region, Bnei Brak, the same ultra-Orthodox community hit on Passover Eve, the same civilian density, the same religious significance. The pattern was established. The pattern was repeated. Casualties were immediate, 4 wounded total, 2 babies among them, an 8-month-old infant, a 14-month-old toddler, shrapnel injuries, not direct hits. The Iron Dome interceptions created debris fields. The cluster submunitions created fragmentation patterns. The babies were in bedrooms, in cribs, in supposed safety. The Israeli Defense Forces confirmed the 4 salvos, confirmed the cluster warheads, confirmed the baby casualties. The response was promised. The response was pending. The cycle was accelerating. Share this video right now, because this casualty report, these 2 babies wounded as Trump announced 3 more weeks of war, has been reduced to statistics and financial coverage, while the human cost demands recognition. But what does finish the job actually mean in military terms? This is the question that reveals the true scope of what Trump announced. The June 2025 12-day war damaged 3 major Iranian nuclear facilities, Natanz, Fordow, Isfahan, but did not destroy them. Underground centrifuges survived. Technical knowledge survived. Scientific personnel survived. The program was delayed, not ended. Finish the job implies comprehensive destruction. All declared facilities, all suspected facilities, all scientific personnel, all technical documentation. The complete eradication of Iranian nuclear capability, not just the weapons potential, the knowledge base, the human expertise, the institutional memory. This requires targets beyond nuclear facilities, military command centers, intelligence headquarters, Revolutionary Guard leadership, potentially government leadership. The scope expands inevitably. The timeline extends necessarily. 3 weeks is minimum for such comprehensive targeting. The risk is equally comprehensive. Iranian retaliation against regional oil infrastructure, against American bases, against Israeli cities, against shipping in Hormuz. The 7% oil surge anticipates this. The $2 trillion market loss prices this. The two babies wounded preview this. Stay till the very end, because the final piece of this analysis is the most important context for every person thinking about what 3 more weeks of extremely hard hits actually means. Here is the complete documented picture. Trump announcement at 11:47 a.m. Oil surge to 108.69 by 12:30 p.m. Market losses of $2.3 trillion by $4 p.m. 4 Iranian missile salvos with cluster warheads. 2 babies wounded in Bnei Brak. And the diplomatic context that made this inevitable. The Geneva talks collapsed March 28, 2026. American demands: complete Iranian nuclear program dismantlement, uranium stockpile transfer to Russia, permanent IAEA monitoring, Iranian response, limited enrichment suspension, reversible measures, sovereignty preservation. The gap was unbridgeable. Trump had issued 12-day ultimatum March 15th. The deadline passed. Military action began March 28th. Limited strikes, demonstration attacks. The escalation ladder was climbed step by step. April 2nd was the announcement of the final climb. The sprint to the top, the finish, the job commitment. Iranian strategy was clear. Retaliation for retaliation, escalation for escalation. Demonstrate pain tolerance, demonstrate reach. Demonstrate that any American-Israeli victory would be Pyrrhic. The cluster warheads were message. The baby casualties were collateral. The message was received. None of this means Iranian nuclear program was peaceful. None of this means Israeli security concerns were invalid. None of this means American regional interests were illegitimate. These are real complexities that honest analysts across the political spectrum acknowledge. But there is a difference between managed conflict and existential war. And finish the job crosses that line. 3 weeks of extremely hard hits crosses that line. The announcement of April 2nd, 2026 crossed that line. The oil markets understood, the stock markets understood, the 2 babies in Bnei Brak hospital understood. This is not the first time oil shocks have triggered global recession. Understanding the pattern is essential to understanding the risk. In 1973, OPEC embargo triggered 3.2% global GDP contraction. In 1979, Iranian Revolution oil shock triggered 1.9% contraction. In 1990, Gulf War spike triggered 0.5% contraction. In 2008, pre-crisis oil hit 147, contributing to financial collapse. Each shock was smaller in relative terms. Each shock was larger in absolute economic impact. The April 2nd, 2026 shock fits this pattern. But with one critical difference: this shock is anticipated. The market is pricing not current disruption, but future destruction. 3 weeks of extremely hard hits. Potential Hormuz closure. Potential Saudi facility targeting. The $108 price assumes the worst case. If the worst case occurs, the price could exceed $150. If the worst case does not occur, the price could collapse to $80. The volatility is extreme. The uncertainty is paralyzing. Central banks face impossible choices: raise rates to combat inflation, deepening recession, cut rates to support growth, worsening inflation. The Federal Reserve, European Central Bank, Bank of England all froze, all waiting, all watching 3 weeks of war. The 2 babies in Bnei Brak are in stable condition. The markets are not. The global economy is not. The world is not. Section 8. The regional explosion beyond Iran-Israel. The regional implications of the Trump announcement extend beyond bilateral conflict. They touch every alliance, every proxy relationship, every calculation of survival. Hezbollah in Lebanon has 150,000 rockets, mostly unguided. Some precision, all within range of northern Israel. The trigger is Iranian. The authorization is reserved. The capability is immediate. The Houthis in Yemen have demonstrated a 1,600-kilometer range. They have struck Israel before. They have struck Saudi Arabia. They have struck the UAE. The Red Sea is already contested. The Bab el-Mandeb Strait is already threatened. Expansion is possible. Shia militias in Iraq number 150,000 fighters. American bases at Al-Assad, Balad, Erbil are within mortar range. The 2020 Soleimani assassination triggered ballistic missile strikes. The 2026 finish of the job announcement could trigger worse. Syria remains unstable. Russian forces remain present. Iranian forces remain present. Israeli strikes continue. Accidental engagement, unintended escalation, great power confrontation, all possible. The two babies in Bnei Brak are casualties. The regional war could produce millions. The announcement of April 2nd, 2026 makes this likely. The 3-week timeline makes this imminent. Let's examine the media response to April 2, because the gap between event and coverage reveals systematic prioritization. The financial news led with oil prices, with market losses, with economic analysis. The human casualties were footnotes. The cluster warheads were technical details. The two babies were statistics. The political news led with Trump's statement, with diplomatic analysis, with will he or won't he speculate. The Iranian response was context. The Israeli casualties were mentioned. The escalation was debated. The human story was buried. The specific babies, their names withheld for privacy, their ages, 8 months, 14 months, their injuries, shrapnel, their location, bedrooms, cribs, homes. The systematic burial serves interests. Oil companies profit from price surge. Defense companies profit from war extension. Political actors profit from strong leader narratives. The actual cost is distributed to consumers at pumps, to families in shelters, to babies in hospitals. The silence is not a conspiracy. It is structured. Market structure, political structure, media structure, all aligned to obscure what April 2nd, 2026 actually was. The announcement of 3 more weeks of extremely hard hits, the beginning of the end. Now I want to ask you the 3 questions I ask at the end of every video, because your answers are part of the historical record of how people responded to this information. Question A: what would you do with this information if you were a Federal Reserve governor right now? Would you push for an immediate interest rate emergency meeting based on oil-driven inflation risk? Or do you believe that regardless of the market shock, the war will resolve within 3 weeks and normal pricing will resume? Tell me exactly what you would do in the comments. Question B: who do you trust more on the timeline question? Trump's specific announcement of 2 to 3 weeks to finish the job, or the Iranian demonstration of cluster warhead capability and continued retaliation capacity? Drop your honest assessment below. Question C: will you speak out about the 2 babies wounded in Bnei Brak, the $2.3 trillion market loss, the 108-hour oil price, and the 3-week timeline for extremely hard hits that was announced April 2nd, 2026? Will you be someone who makes sure that documentation is part of the public record and part of the national conversation? Or will you let it get buried under the next price update and the next casualty report? Here is where we stand on April 2nd, 2026. Trump announced finish the job. Oil hit $108. Markets lost $2.3 trillion. Iran fired cluster warheads. 2 babies were wounded. 3 weeks of extremely hard hits were promised. The world is waiting for what comes next. The 2 babies have names. Those names deserve to be remembered. If this video gave you the full picture that the headlines did not, please share it right now. Every share reaches someone who has been following this war without knowing what April 2, 2026 actually cost. Hit subscribe so you are here when the next major development breaks. And drop a comment below, because your voice in this conversation is the most important thing this channel has. We cover this because it matters. We cover it with verified facts because that is the only journalism that serves you. And we will keep asking the questions that the people in power hope you stop asking. I will see you in the next one.